Thank you all very much. Thank you, Stephanie, for that kind introduction, and y'all be glad to know that I'm the last speaker. It's like never mind, I was going to tell y'all a joke, but I'll cut it out. Keep it short. But thank y'all very much for this opportunity, and we just want to take a moment and to say that to National President Margaret Moran, to thank you for your leadership and for all that you have done and continue to do and to lead this great organization. Now in its 84th year. You know, LULAC has been at the forefront not just of organizations, but of an entire era, an entire movement. Going back 84 years, that LULAC has spawned a whole generation of leaders. Leaders who dreamed 84 years ago to build a national organization. I'm sure that what LULAC is today, that they did not envision something this great. But they did know this, that we needed an organization through which citizens could be empowered. And they founded LULAC on that principle of having an institution that would help empower the Latino community to fight for civil rights, fight for our voting rights, and in education as well. But when you look today, it's a generation of LULAC leaders. You see people like Margaret Moran as our national president. I serve with LULAC on the ASER board, the Hispanic Association of Corporate Responsibility, a group of 16 national organizations. And our chair today is Margaret Moran. So she goes from president of LULAC to chair of ASER. And go right ahead. Anytime you want to applaud for LULAC or Margaret Moran, y'all go right ahead. But it doesn't end there. We're part of a coalition of 36 national organizations that we founded in 1991 to again bring Latino leaders across the board, across the country, and to form the National Hispanic Leadership Agenda in 1991. And our vice president, vice chair of that organization today is none other than the distinguished executive director of LULAC, Brent Wilkes. Give Brent a well-deserved round of applause. LULAC has been at the forefront of coalition building now for over 80 years. And during that struggle of over 80 years, at the forefront when it comes to civic participation, fighting for voting rights, at the forefront of the battle for immigration reform, for education, for civil rights, for human rights, voting rights, whatever rights are denied anyone, you can expect LULAC to be in that fight to ensure that everyone in this country has rights regardless of their legal status, because until everyone has equal rights, then no one has equal rights. It's an amazing story of over 84 years now. 84 years ago today, we are inspired by our dreamers today. But let me tell you, it didn't start with this generation of dreamers. This is a new generation of dreamers that we see today. But over 80 years ago, dreamers got together in Texas and formed LULAC. And this was a whole generation of dreamers that gave birth to an era of institution building, knowing that what we needed in the Latino community as we grew and progressed, that we would need institutions, not just one, but several and many institutions through which our community could be empowered. LULAC gave birth to that era of institution building that is historic in the history of this country, and certainly the cornerstone of the empowerment movement of Latinos over the last part of this last century, over nearly 100 years from now. Institutions that were created for the basis of Latino empowerment. Some of the dreamers of that era, some of us know, some of us knew. All of us should remember who some of these dreamers were. These dreamers who knew we needed institutions like the American GI Forum, dreamers like Dr. Hector P. Garcia in Corpus Christi, who dreamed about an organization that would fight for veterans' rights and their families, and they formed the American GI Forum. Dreamers like Cesar Chavez and Dolores Huerta, who knew that farm workers also would need an institution through which farm worker justice could be achieved and the struggle for farm workers could continue, and they formed the United Farm Workers Union. Maclovio Barraza, one of the pioneers of this movement, also a dreamer who helped found the National Council of La Raza. Paul Montemayor, one of those dreamers of decades ago, who helped give birth and rise to LACLA, the Labor Council for Latin American Advancement. Dr. Antonia Pantoja, one of those dreamers of that generation as well, who founded Aspira. Willie Velasquez, who founded, along with others, Maclovio Barraza by his side, Willie Velasquez founded the Southwest Voter Registration Education Project. There are many others. These were dreamers of those years. Dreamers of over the last 50 years that have given rise to some of the most powerful institutions that we have today in this country. And I'm proud to say that Willie Velasquez, Hank Lacayo, and Ray Gonzalez also were dreamers, and they helped create the United States Hispanic Leadership Institute as well. This was part of their dream, that we would no longer have to depend on organizations that were not Latinos. We would no longer have to depend on Democrats or Republicans through which to empower ourselves, but that we would have our own institutions to organize our community, our own organizations and institutions through which we could empower our community, register to vote, fight for civil rights, bring lawsuits, MALDEF, these organizations, and Puerto Rican Legal Defense, and Latino justice organizations that could fight for our rights. That is the legacy of that era, of that generation that was spawned by LULAC over 84 years ago. Let me just close with a little bit of scripture. Some of y'all know that I like to preach. But just to be brief, today let me just conclude with a little scripture that says that your elders shall dream dreams and your children shall see visions. These were the dreamers of that era. The dreamers of the last 50, 60, 70, 80 years were those dreamers that created these institutions through which we Latinos could empower ourselves. And today's dreamers are immigrant youth who inspire us all, with that spirit, with that vision, with that hope. They are the dreamers of today, the visionaries that the Bible talked about. And it is because of organizations like LULAC and NCLR and LACLA and all of these others now that are fighting side by side with our undocumented students who are fighting also as well for equal opportunity and access to higher education and to jobs. This is their legacy. And today when we talk about celebrating LULAC, that is what we're celebrating, not just what LULAC is doing today at the forefront of so many important struggles, but for decades and decades and decades, indeed well into the last century, LULAC has been at the forefront, giving us all good reason to celebrate and to be proud. And I just want to thank LULAC and our national president, Margaret Moran, for giving us this opportunity to come together to say thank you to LULAC, thank you to Margaret Moran, thank you to all the chapters and affiliates around the country who fight for our community day after day. Thank you all very much. God bless you all. Y'all keep up the good work.